It has begun. Mortal Kombat 1 is here. Now, I know what people are going to start thinking. John, you had that one dispute about MK11 and the MK 2021 movie with Infinite Retro. And by the way, he was a cool dude. That was the last time I did anything big on Mortal Kombat. I was talking about the movie, destroying It's a Gundam's logic on the Mortal Kombat universe, and having a fun discussion slash debate with a YouTuber called Infinite Retro. Now that Mortal Kombat 1 is here, we can finally look past the dreaded time traveling madness and infinite looping retardedness of MK11. Now, don't get me wrong, there are things about MK11 that people like, but the cons do outweigh the bad. But this game is a fresh slate, but it does still have to continue from where the multiversal time traveling stuff left off. But I can tell you now, this game handled the concept of what MK11 was trying to do. It handled it much better here. Now, not perfectly, but more digestible. But before we get to anything related to the story, let's just say that this was the kind of game Mortal Kombat needed. It needed a reboot like this. Now, this is the second reboot. If anyone remembers, we had the original timeline of games, we had the 3D era, which was still part of the original timeline, then we got to MK9, which rebooted everything after Armageddon. Then with a rebooted trilogy, and I'm saying trilogy as in, I'm not talking about MK9. I know MK9 is a reboot of the first trilogy, but it is treated as one narrative in MK9's story mode. MKX was a retelling of Mortal Kombat 4, then Mortal Kombat 11, which didn't have to go into time travel. I've still argued that it should not have gone in that direction. They could have done a retelling of Deadly Alliance, Deception, and Armageddon. You know? Because Mortal Kombat 4 was a 3D era game. When you think about it, it was. But that's besides the point. This starts the timeline from scratch, with Liu Kang being the god of thunder and fire and the titan of time. Therefore, he is not a titan of time anymore, but he has altered the destinies and malefactors of other people's lives. But some events and characters still come to be. But what this game does, it breaks down what we once thought of these great characters, breaks them down to their cores, and rebuilds them from there, with elements that still echo who they were, such as Bihan, for example. He is still an asshole Sub-Zero. But when this game was initially shown, we thought, is him and Hanzo Hasashi biological brothers? No. They changed it in this universe and in this timeline. No Hanzo, but Kuai Liang becomes Scorpion, but not through Spectre status, through natural magic and mastery of different elemental power. That fits more in line with someone like Kuai Liang. And the funny thing is, I actually like this interpretation of Scorpion because it gives the character of Hanzo a chance to rest, because Hanzo has been done to death, and Kuai Liang is always seen as, yes, he's the more memorable Sub-Zero, but he will always be seen as the second Sub-Zero in the universe. Johnny Cage, for example, we see him broken down. We see how he has a relationship develop, his bond and friendship with the character of Kenshi Takahashi. Here, we never really saw Johnny Cage's personal life at the beginning of any Mortal Kombat game. Here, we see that, yes, he might be a movie star, he might be the $1,000,000 playboy mentally, but inside, he is a man breaking down with everything around him, and he doesn't realize that. And when Liu Kang comes along, it puts him on the path. You could tell that Liu Kang in this timeline of Mortal Kombat is trying to prevent certain things happening to the people he once knew. He doesn't obviously directly tell anybody of the previous timeline later on in the game. Yes, spoiler, he does later on, but to 3 characters that it's more important to hear that the different timelines were shifted and changed. Versus here, Johnny Cage obviously doesn't know. Kenshi doesn't know. Beyond Scorpion, Kung Lao, Raiden, none of his champions of Earthrealm understand what is happening here. And the game does start off really good. It takes you into this new timeline, not mentioning anything of a multiversal event. The only thing you get is Liu Kang's opening dialogue, which of course has to address a change in time. But here, all the players are aligned, and it goes back to the vibes of the original Mortal Kombat. Not only in gameplay, but in the style of storytelling. Actually, it feels much more like the MK9 reboot of how it goes chapter by chapter, telling characters. Of course, the original game, we know the characters, and it starts off to the tournament. Here, this leads into a tournament, and a more non-lethal tournament. It's called Mortal Kombat, but it's not about killing and death, but it is about competition between the realm of Outworld and Earthrealm, set forth by Liu Kang and the old king of Edenia, Jarrod, aka Sindel's husband. That's another key thing that plays a huge role in this game, the element of family, which was something that was used in MKX with the Cage family against their war with Shinnok. Here, Liu Kang is beginning to establish a family dynamic with his champions, though they don't address it like saying, oh, you're my brother, you're this, like that. Their camaraderie, how they grow together throughout the journey, you really feel that Kung Lao, Raiden, Kenshi, Johnny Cage are all starting to feel like brothers in arms, along with the 3D era characters, which is another thing that does get touched on in this game. But when you do start this game, you have the story, invasion, the typical towers, versus customization does come back, but it is very minimal, and it's not as grind heavy as MK11, which was a big problem with MK11. MK11 had such a huge problem with dumping so much time into RNG into the crypt. And actually, for once, I'm glad there's no crypt here, because the crypt was so abused in the last game. Now, the selection of characters in this game is a combination of both some classics, re-renditions of their classic counterparts, and 3D era fighters, which a lot of people have been asking for 3D era fighters, like Li Mei, Ashra, Nitara, Havoc, General Reiko, Tanya, Rain, now all baseline roster characters for the first time. They really haven't been baseline characters since the 3D era, and hell, in fucking MK11, Havoc wasn't even there. The Cleric of Chaos is one of the most popular 3D era characters. And this time, everyone is divvied up and you know who's who. This time, the roster is really easy to navigate. It feels unique. And also, with this cameo system. Now, a lot of people doubted the cameo system. But you know what the cameo system reminds me of? It plays a lot. Well, not plays, but it reminds me a lot of Mortal Kombat's version of the original Marvel vs. Capcom, where it was either 2v2 or one person and a support character. Now, there's no tag in this game, which I know is disappointing to people, but Mortal Kombat has always been one-on-one confrontations. But this time around, you have the cameo characters of past characters that may not be on the roster, but they can aid you in combat, and also they have their own unique combos that you can call in to help you during your combo. It really adds creativity to the fighting, and when a lot of people were doubting it, it pulled through unexpectedly. Now you have your traditional Novice Tower, Adept Tower, Master Tower, Survivor, and Endless, but it does feel basic, but it does got the vibe of, let's say, Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3's towers, where you just saw simple screen of a background, the multiple towers, you see what it is. It's not as confusing as something as Injustice's Multiverse Towers, or Towers of Time, or the Living Towers that was in Mortal Kombat X. So the towers go back to a very basic feel. And it just goes back to what I said before. Mortal Kombat 1 strips what made things so complicated, and it brought things more to ground level. It's basically, they're not trying to have their house built on leaves, twigs, or card like MK11. They're trying to build a solid foundation for the future. Now, invasion mode is after the story mode, because I wanted to make sure I beat the story mode first and then played invasion mode. Invasion mode is a unique version of how they do the challenge towers. It's like a mini conquest type of mode, RPG in a sense, where you level up your fighter. And you know what else it reminds me of? If anybody remembers Dragon Ball Raging Blast 2, the Galaxy mode, how each character, they didn't have a specific campaign, but they had a grid-like Galaxy mode where you leveled up, did important battles, and went through specific... You go through specific moments of that character's history, but it is more so done as a grand RPG, not a grand RPG, but more of a RPG game that you're going through level by level. That's what this one feels like, except you actually see your character progress through the map. And you can choose any character, level them up. You take one character with you and one cameo character with you. You can switch it up at any point, but each character has their own individual level up that unlocks different cosmetics, different brutalities, fatalities, colors for the character. This time around, they streamlined being able to unlock things instead of random RNG from Mortal Kombat 11. You just simply play as a character, you progress with that character, and you unlock said things for that character. Unlocking different consumables to help you in combat, because there's different challenges in here. They bring back Test Your Might, which is also brought back in the campaign for specific moments. Rather than QuickTime events, they utilized an old Mortal Kombat feel. And in the invasion mode, which I might just have to do a separate video talking about it, because there's a lot to talk about with invasion mode, and it's not enough time to talk in the review because there's other things that needs to be discussed about this game. You know, between secret battles, this really makes it feel like old Mortal Kombat, but in a mini open world sense. You know, each character has their own tiers, such as, yes, it takes the model of a battle, almost like a battle pass, but you don't pay for them. You just go down a battle tree of leveling up the character. You get different calling cards, like I said, you get different colors, you get different artwork, versus going to the crypt. If you remember in MK11, if you went to the crypt, you opened up a chest, something that could be super expensive could just be art for the game, where something that could be like 730 coins was a fatality and a gear piece, which doesn't make sense. And then even your cameo characters have their own level ups to make them unique with different attacks, you know, different color palettes, and of course you get different color cards too for them as well. It feels like a very simple way to level things up. Now, what has seen an improvement over MK11, which they tried to do this but they failed at it in my opinion, this one goes back to the control vibes of the first two Mortal Kombat games. You're not rewarded for rushing, and you're not rewarded for spamming. You actually have to combine your attacks and utilize your cameo characters both for attack and defense. So you're rewarded for mastering the character. You can utilize the original moves, and every character is broken down with simple moves like they used to be from MK2. Where MK2, if you remember, let's say I'm going to use the Mortal Kombat collection from PS3 for example and pull up the skill tree menu. When you would open up the skill tree, they would have at best 3 or 4 special attacks and non-stop combos. Here, it goes back to 3 or 4 super attacks spliced in with combos that actually mimic some characters' moves from the older games. And it also feels, the connectivity with the attacks feels like the 3D era. Imagine if you took Mortal Kombat Deception, for example, and put it on a 2D plane. That's how this feels. You know, Mortal Kombat Deception, that, like, I'm going to be going to that one a lot because this game draws heavily from the 3D era, more than you know. And I know a lot of people are like, well, if it draws from the 3D era, where's character creation, where's all that? And I'm not talking about that, which I'm one of the people that I kind of miss that. I miss that feature, you know, being able to create your character from Armageddon. But Deadly Alliance Deception in Armageddon brought in the 3D fighting style, very similar to like Tekken, where you can circle the map with your opponent. It's a 3D open map, open fighting environment. But Mortal Kombat was always best at the 2D plane that it is in. Now, to unlock things in this game, yes, unfortunately, and I'm going to say something controversial, yes, there's microtransactions in this game, but they're unnecessary, if that makes any sense. You have these things called the Dragon Stones, or you have these silver combat coins, which you can unlock in the invasion mode. Now, no, you cannot unlock Dragon Stones in invasion mode. That's something you have to pay real money for. But you really don't need to buy those premium items because you can get them from the invasion mode. You just have to work for it. And a lot of people are saying, well, we miss AI being able to take over. And that's the, I'm going to pardon my French, that's the fucking problem with modern Mortal Kombat fans. They don't want to work for anything anymore. They don't want to fight for it. Okay? People used to fight for these things in the crypt. You used to have to go back through the game, play the games multiple times. Hell, Mortal Kombat's Deception in arcade, not arcade mode, but what was it? Conquest mode. You had to go through the entirety of different realms and different maps in order to fucking unlock the thing you wanted to unlock. They streamlined it heavily back with Armageddon, and Deadly Alliance had an overwhelming too much stuff. They tried to make it more of a mini game in the reboot and in MKX, and don't get me wrong, MK11 had a good idea with the crypt. It was an adventure, a little mini adventure game. But the problem was, it wasn't worth going through because you didn't know what you were going to get. And the problem with RNG, if you don't know what you're going to get, the problem with Mortal Kombat games going to RNG is because, at least in the older games, you knew what you were going to get. Sometimes in the booklets, or sometimes you would have to look it up, which was the old combat secrets. You know, being able to find something. But here, how do they treat the 3D era in this campaign, in this story mode? They do it beautifully for the most part. Okay? They handle it for the most part. Baraka, Kenshi, Ashura, Havoc. You see how these characters become the characters we know, but not in the way that you remember. They are the entities you remember, but how they are created and how they become who they are to be are different. And even certain people that were villains are now heroes this time around, such as Baraka. I never thought that I would love to see Baraka on the good side, because he was always an interesting, not really interesting villain, but he was like, you know, a jobber. Let's just call it for what it is. He's a Mortal Kombat jobber, like a WWE jobber. But here, you actually feel for the man. You actually feel that this time around, being Tarkatan is more of a poisoned curse, rather than being a monster from Outworld. He was a Denian in this universe. Liu Kang gave everybody a chance. And even though they don't outright say who created the affliction of Tarkat, it is heavily implied that, of course, Shang Tsung will create Tarkat, spread it, make profit off trying to create cures for it. Because he's not a sorcerer yet in this game. I'm pretty sure everyone already knows the twist of this game, so spoiler warning, I'm going to tell you anyway. They make you believe that it's Kronika who returns, but when Garrus tells you that Kronika cannot return, Titans and Elder Gods can, well, Titans can't return. I know Elder Gods are mentioned, but Titans cannot return. Shang Tsung, they canonized both Aftermath endings, the Liu Kang good ending and the Titan Shang Tsung ending, which is, throughout most of this game, it's an original not original retelling, but it's a unique story going into telling how are things unfolding in this? How is this version of Shang Tsung? Obviously, no matter what universe you're in, Shang Tsung is a dickhead. Let's just call it for it. He is a malicious bastard. Okay? He is an evil son of a bitch. Now, a lot of people are like, oh, well, Shang Tsung again. But many people forget that Shang Tsung was the villain of the very first game. And if you're taking it back to the beginning, you need to have the staple villain that started it all. Because when we first played Mortal Kombat, we didn't know nothing of the Emperor. We didn't really know nothing of the other realms. We only knew Outworld wanted to invade. And for all we knew, Shang Tsung could have been the leader behind everything, as he originally intended to be, because there are old Mortal Kombat, like, cancel concepts of the very first game that are still out there that explain that he was going to be the one that started all these issues with the tournaments, with the invasions. But of course, inspired by Star Wars, they had to bring an emperor in, henceforth Shao Kahn, which in this game, Shao Kahn is not emperor. Sindel is a fair queen of Outworld. Her daughters, Melina and Kitana, even though Melina does become part Tarkatan, she actually is a good person in this game. And you slowly see elements of story beats from Deadly Alliance, Deception, and Armageddon come into play. Because a lot of people, a lot of Mortal Kombat fans came in during the 3D era. And since the original era was given so much love in MK9, and people could say hit or miss with MKX, but you could say MKX did its unique retelling of 4, and it wasn't as bad as people said it was. A lot of people actually look favorably back at MKX. MK11 is what shit the fucking bed, and it's what, how do you say, shit the bed, jump the fucking shark. It just did way too damn much. It should have just been a retelling of the last 3 events in Mortal Kombat's old timeline history, maybe with a different outcome. But here, seeing characters like Quan Chi become Quan Chi, we see human Quan Chi. We see that these characters were not permitted to be villains. Liu Kang did not allow it. But Titan Shang Tsung, taking the form of Kronika, brought these villains into the foreplay. No, I didn't mean to say it like that. Pardon my French. Foreplay. God damn it. Anyway, you see characters like Ermac come into play. You see how the Lin Kuei falls and becomes wicked through Bihan. You see in arcade endings, which I'm guarantee will be canon, the arcade ladder ending that Kuai Liang forms the Shira Ryu. We will eventually see these story beats in an eventual Mortal Kombat 2. But they did have to recover and go back and finish the multiversal stuff. And this is where the game kind of begins to shit the bed again, but in a way, it does it better. You fuse the events of Deadly Alliance, Deception, and Armageddon. The only thing people are upset about really with this game is that Onaga wasn't the villain, because a lot of people wanted Onaga to be the villain, and I understand that. But Onaga is not a base tier villain to just throw into a game and then have him defeated. He's not Shang Tsung, he's not Shao Kahn or General Shao, he's not Quan Chi. He's an entity that is above him. I rather Onaga. I can wait for him a little longer. If he gets built up to be a new variation of Shao Kahn, like a Dragon Emperor of some sorts, instead of General Shao being a repeat of his old past self, I think very much so Mortal Kombat is going in the right direction in terms of storytelling. Now, don't get me wrong. Like I said, I have complained about the multiversal events. But for some reason, this game made the multiversal sections more fun and had that Mortal Kombat, that outrageous Mortal Kombat nature. That was something that was missing from MK11. Now, more so what I want to get into is how this game kind of, and I mean kinda, did work in the multiversal events. So like I said, it had to pick up, a part of this game had to address the Titan Shang Tsung ending and the canon ending of Aftermath, which turning both into canon endings. Now, what that implies with this game is there probably will be multi-story DLCs, especially with how this game ends, but I think it is best if this game does finish its multiversal arc rather than leave it hung out to dry, because that means if it's fully covered and if it's fully done, We could go into the future with a new MK2, a new MK3, things like that, to be able to tell new stories with new variations of these characters. There is a lot of potential with these characters, with these new variations. Taking them back to the beginning and turning some characters that were villains into heroes, and turning some heroes into villains. Some of the key players of the original trilogy are missing. There is no Jax in the story mode. There is no Sonya in the story mode. Like, there's no special forces. None of that. It went more into the mysticism side of Mortal Kombat. It's going more into its supernatural elements rather than mixing the military aspect and G.I. Joe vibe of the special forces, because they were in almost every game. So I wasn't upset to see that they were not here. And there was a lot of things in this story mode that actually would make newer fans and older fans from both series, from the rebooted series and the new series that started with 9, happy. You see characters like King Gerard reunite with his wife Sindel, a good version of her. Melina reunites with her father. Katana reunites with her father. You see the love of Liu Kang and Kitana, and you understand why that time is always against them, or something conspires to keep them apart in said game. You know, there's actually one thing I do want to mention. Mortal Kombat 11, though the fatalities were cool, they were a little bit too over the top and jumping the shark. Mortal Kombat 1's fatalities, in my opinion, are more tasteful, if that makes any sense. They're not over the top gratuitous, but they're very powerful and very felt, and actually more unique to the characters than fatalities of old. And I can respect them for mitigating it a little bit, but still keeping it over the top. Now, with that being said, let me get back to what I was saying about the main game as a whole. I hope MK1, that this is a good foundation to start with. I feel it's a good foundation. Hell, I actually like the feature that they had in the final level. You can actually take any character from the roster and play the final level, you know, to take down the new Deadly Alliance of Titan Quang and Titan Shang Tsung. And if you're not going to use the Dragon King, and if you're going to not use the overused Shao Kahn, I mean, come on. The Deadly Alliance is the best way to go. And this final battle was really cool. It does harken back to Armageddon. But this time around, we never actually got a chance to fully play the final battle of Armageddon, if that makes any sense. Even in the original Mortal Kombat Armageddon, the ending cutscene just shows Taven saying, "I'm challenging Blaze to Mortal Kombat," or Blaze says, "Fight me in Mortal Kombat," and then it just shows the arcade ladder screen going up. Taven just shoots directly at the top and you fight Blaze. Where you don't even get a chance to play Armageddon in the reboot's beginning of 9. You just see the aftermath. Here, you actually see multiversal versions of all the characters, both good and evil. And yes, there's even a good Shang Tsung, a good Shao Kahn. I can't fucking believe it. But at least in this ending, it made sense to have a battle like this for this game. The multiversal acts don't really come in until the second half, or the third or fourth half of the game. At least you have had half, or at least 60 to 70% of the game focus on the new world and its established of what Liu Kang has established in this new era of Mortal Kombat. But then when it does get into the Titan battles of the multiverse, I like the way it did it here versus how stupid it was in MK11. You see different versions. Hell, you fight different versions of characters. I mean, there's a variation of Kung Lao Scorpion, Raiden Katana, 3 Melinas, and what was it? A reptile version of Garrus, a fire god version of Kano, an evil Sonya Kano, 3 different versions of Johnny Cage, a good Quan Chi and a good Shang Tsung fighting each other. Not fighting each other, but like a pair going against the evil versions. That's when you would say, John, this game jumped the shark. And yes, it did. But at least for this game, it made sense because it harkened back to the old games. It took us to a battlefield we all know as fans. That is the Pyramid Battle of Argus. If you're going to have a final battle anywhere in Mortal Kombat, especially a multiversal event, set it there. You know, that's where you can go buck wild and see different characters fight each other. And yes, all these are just different potential skins and versions of characters that we will see unlocked through the invasion mode. But I mean, a Baraka version of Johnny Cage. Like, I'm glad I caught the gameplay for that because you're seeing it right now. A Baraka version of Johnny Cage. In what fucking universe does that happen? I don't know, but you can only get that experience in Mortal Kombat. Because fuck Chronica and how she would have done it. She wouldn't have given us that. You know what? I gotta thank Titan Shang Tsung. At least he made this fucking possible. But that's besides the point. This game does leave off, though, on a pretty shocking ending for what they were setting up. If they're gonna do one more multiversal thing, but just do it as DLC and not have it affect the future of the series, it does leave off with Havoc, a Titan version of Havoc, possibly being the villain. And Havoc has not been a villain or in a spotlight ever as the villain. And he's a unique choice to go with because he's chaotic. He thrives off chaos. He thrives off combat. So I'm pretty sure a lot of 3D era fans were happy when they saw Havoc and they were like, this is not going to be good. Because Havoc has always caused some sort of nonsense or BS or retarded shit in any era or timeline he's been in. Especially the original timeline during Deception, in the MKX comics, and by my understanding, he was torturing Garrus in the Aftermath DLC when Shang Tsung sent him to the Nether, to the Chaos Realm. So, Mortal Kombat 1, for fans of old and for fans of the new era, I think it married the two finally in a way that MK11 could not. And with its problems, don't get me wrong, like I told you, it has its problems. But its problems are outweighed by its potential future and what it does right. Stripping everything back to basics. Showing love to an era of Mortal Kombat that people didn't think were going to get love. Hence the 3D era being represented in this game. But what can we expect from the future of Mortal Kombat? I don't know. But all I can tell you is that most likely from this point forward it's going to be bright. It just depends how well or how much well this game is received going forward. You know, I do look forward to its combat cast of characters being added, you know, future fighters, future cameo characters, and, you know, it gets balanced further because I know a lot of people, the one thing, there is a balance problem online, that's why I don't play online, but I do play local with friends and family. I'm going to get back to playing Invasion Mode. I will eventually stream it in full, the Invasion Mode and the story mode, but I wanted to take my time to do the story mode, play Invasion Mode, and get a grasp for everything I said. This is Emperor John Kyo 3D Gaming. Be sure to like, subscribe, favorite, and I'll see you next time.